We are back in open. I want to take a moment to express my thanks to Mr. Coley for allowing us to use his facility tonight. Thank you very much. And Officer Burkett for being here tonight for us. We appreciate your attendance. So thank you very much. I also want to point out at this time, we do not have public comment during committee meetings, but we did have some emails sent. And so those are printed off and are at your tables for you to read. So please take the time. I want to assure our public that we do take all your comments in stride. We do read them. We take them very seriously. So again, thank you for sending those. I've already read them, and I'm sure the other board members have already looked over them, but thank you again. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Eamer for some brief comments.
Thank you, Chair Warden. And likewise, I would like to thank Mr. Coley and his staff for setting up. But getting ready to have school, and you have to stop and set this up. I've been where you are, so it is quite a bit. And I thank you for that. I want to commend our executive staff. We came in an impromptu meeting yesterday, Sunday, because in closely watching the Delta variant, it's concerning. And we'll have a presentation here in a couple of minutes, but what we're going to have to do, I think, given the fact that the numbers, and we don't have a dashboard for our kids yet, but we'll start that. I looked on the CDC website, and July 4th, we had an infection rate of about 2.4%. Now it's about 15.5% 6 weeks later. So I think we're going to have to be a little bit less restrictive with virtual options. So we'll be talking about that. And we'll be putting out a Google form tomorrow. I believe that's right, Tammy, a Google form tomorrow to parents for anybody that would like to apply. Now, I would like to say this. I would like to say that we still believe strongly that in-person learning is best. We do think we still believe we can safely do this. I know that there has been some consternation over the mask requirement. However, I can tell you with confidence that I talked with a medical professional today, and he said, I hate wearing them as much as anybody, but it's really one of the best measures that we have, in addition to vaccinations. But I'm not a medical professional. That's a personal decision, but we are asking and requiring masks. Today, Pitt County, Greenville went from optional to required masks. Their board voted today to require masks. Mooresville City Schools, a few days ago, they opened school optional. They had 80 students, and Mooresville's very small, that they had to quarantine, so they went from optional to required. So I think we made the right decision for everybody. We're still not requiring them outside, but we are also going to be loosening our restrictions a little bit for the virtual options, but we still believe that we can have school in person safely, but we are watching the numbers very closely. And again, I want to thank the executive team for jumping on board a meeting yesterday. We had a robust discussion, a couple hours or so, and we've got some information that we'll share with you tonight. So thank you, Chair Warden, for indulging me in a few comments.
You're certainly welcome. And I just want to piggyback off that. I think that the board will agree that we none really enjoy wearing the mask, but we see the necessity of it. And this is a health and safety issue. And so we are going to look very strongly at the numbers continue to follow those, follow the medical advice and the science to determine our regulations. So with that said, let's go on with our committee meetings. We'll begin with the financial committee. And I normally, as chair, head that, but I'm going to ask my vice chair to take the head on this tonight. So, Mr. Walton,
Yes.
if you will.
First up, I would like to introduce Ms. Marlene Wilkins, who's going to talk about her maintenance report. Marlene?
Good evening. I wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but before you have my maintenance report. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. As you can tell, the cleaning crew cleaned all the schools and had them ready for the staff as of Monday. We have been moving furniture in and out of classrooms and getting the floors ready. So I'm hoping that you've been able to see a difference. There have been some minor grounds tasks that we performed. PW Moore, we cut back several bushes and trees. Central, we've made way. There's a few sites that they haven't got to mulch yet, but they will be. I think that's about it. The bleachers are complete at Northeastern High School. He has the decals to finish on the floor, but other than that, that will be a completed project. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
That wasn't contracted out, correct?
The bleachers, yes, ma'am.
Your maintenance staff did that, yeah. And where are we on grounds with your staff? Are you still understaffed with the grounds?
Yes, ma'am, we have. Yes, ma'am. I have 3 applicants that I will be interviewing for positions. We've had 1 staff member from the bus garage that has helped us for the past 3 weeks.
Okay.
I have a question. Are we still entertaining hiring a contractor? I know we talked about it one time before. Are we still entertaining hiring a contractor for grounds?
Several bids were sent out due to the fact that it was the middle of the mowing season, and a lot of the contractors already have their contracts in place. They were not willing to commit to just a few months out of the year. And plus, they were short-staffed as well.
That's why I asked about the your ground staff. So, but you're saying you've got interviews set up for 3
Yes,
additional people?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when will those interviews take place?
Thursday, hopefully.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions?
Have we have any preparations to, I know last year at the end of the year, we were concerned about lighting in our parking lots ahead of the time change, and it's always an issue with evening events at our high schools and middle schools. Sometimes bulbs are burnt out. Sometimes lights aren't working at the start of school, and we're not on campus in the evening. It's always an issue every year when we start back to school. Any plans to make sure that our parking lots are lit and safe?
Yes, ma'am. All the preventive maintenance has been taken care of. He's replaced most bulbs with LEDs. And as far as any athletics, if we need additional lighting, we have purchased a mobile, one of the light towers that's based at maintenance that can be checked out when they need it for athletics.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any more questions for Ms. Wilkins? Thank you, Ms. Wilkins.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Rachel Haynes, Chief Finance Officer, to talk about schedule of fees budget resolution, and fundraisers.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Brenda, Committee Chair Lawton, and our Superintendent, Board of Board Members of Aging. Finance has 3 items requested for the agenda this evening. The first item on the agenda for finance is FBC 02, schedule of fees for the 2021-2022 school year. For policy 4600, the board must approve all fees, with the fees must be published on the website on February 15th. Any fee imposed will be waived or reduced due to demonstrate economic cost. Are there any judgments on any of the fees that represent? The next item is FBC the budget resolution for the 2021-2022 school year. This establishes the initial budget for this school year for all funds. Section 1 and 2. And there should be any of that on your. Section 3 and 4 is the state employee school fund. Section 5 and 6 are the federal grants received to date, which includes PRC, PR 17, 163, and 165. Section 7 and 8 shall be present. Section 9 and 10 is local central revenue. Section 11 and 12 is the capital outlay and capital department that will be paid for the 2021 school year is passed. And finally, section 13 and 14 is the absence of care. Are there any questions on the budget resolution?
Can you explain what school choice is under capital outlay?
So at the end of this school year, we had some residual of our budget. There's a remaining funds. And the county is agreed to pay to a 10-to-1 pot so that we have that flexibility to use those funds for things that come up throughout the year.
Okay,
Or
thank
for options.
you.
We're very good at that. It could eliminate us having to go back and forth. Are there any other questions? All right, and we have FBC 04, which is the fundraising request for the month. Are there any questions on fundraisers? Chair Walton, no budget.
Okay, thank you. Chair Ward, do I need to put in a motion now put these on the consent agenda?
You can, yeah, or you can wait until we get these other items
Yeah, I'll wait till we
and
get
do
these
it
up.
all at the same time.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Bert Lane, Deputy Chief Academic Officer, to come up and talk about after-school care.
Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Dr. Ingram, and board members. I'm here this evening to give an update on after-school care. Currently, the after-school program does not have the staffing to open all sites, and in fact, we are anticipating only being able to open 1 or 2 in September. We will open Northside Elementary. This site was selected based on previous needs, with the site having the largest attendance selected to open first. We will continue to open sites as employees are hired using the same criteria. We recommend limiting enrollment at each site to 40, so each school will have 1 lead teacher and 1 assistant teacher. Further, we recommend increasing the wage rate for lead teachers to $12 and $10 for assistant teachers. In the short term, the program can support the wage increase if we add sites as previously described without raising rates. We will review rates again in October and if necessary, make any recommendation for any rate increase at the November meeting with the January 1st effective date. We would also like to request permission to hire a part-time coordinator to assist Ms. Reed with oversight of the program. This concludes my report. Are there any questions?
You said one or two. What other site are you anticipating?
The next site was Central Elementary School as far as attendance to the program. Those are the sites that had the largest numbers of students participating.
And you're making a statement that opening other sites will be based upon staffing, when we get the staff.
Yes, sir, when we get the staff.
So they're not to wait until October. If you get them now, we can start it.
Yes, sir. If when we re-advertise the position, if we get staffing on board, we will open everything as quickly as we possibly can because we know that this is a real need for parents.
But you're good to go with Northside. All the staff is in place.
We believe so. I'll know for sure tomorrow. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Amy Spencer. She will talk about the ECP Early College COA MOU.
Good evening, Board Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Committee Vice Chair Walton, Superintendent Dr. Ingram, board members and colleagues. I come before you to ask for the memorandum of understanding between the Elizabeth City Pasquotank Early College and the College of the Albemarle FBT 06 in your packet to be placed on the consent agenda. The memorandum of understanding will go from now, present, if approved, 2021 until June 30th, 2025. Teams from both ECPPS and COA reviewed the previously approved memorandum and created revisions to include some changes to the language. The first memorandum addressed a lot of the first year because the first year of the early college was in 2017. So the language from the first year and with implementation in regards to assigned rooms, et cetera, were taken out. And then the major change was in 9.5, which was to improve communication on student performance in college classes by granting access to Elizabeth City Pasquotank Early College Administration Team. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Spencer. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Chair Warden to talk about the African American experience of NENC resolution.
And this was a resolution, if you recall, it was requested by the city council. It's a resolution in support of the African American experience of Northeast North Carolina. They sent us a copy of the resolution. I went through it, made one slight change in the last paragraph, just a grammatical change. And I think that was just a typing error on the part of whomever sent it. So, but as it reads, does anyone have any questions about this resolution? Any comments? I am asking for it to be placed on the consent agenda for the regular board meeting on Monday. So if there are no other questions, we can move on.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to move that we put these items that I'm going to speak to now on the consent agenda for August 23rd. The schedule of fees, FBT02, the budget resolution, FBT03, the fundraisers, FBT04, ECP Early College COA MOU, FBT06, And then African American experience of any NC resolution, FPT 07. I'll make that we put those on consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
Jordan Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you, motion carried. Okay, we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Walton.
I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Warden.
We'll move on to the Personalized Education Committee, Ms. Perezza.
Okay. At this time, we'll have Dr. Amy Spencer present the virtual learning plan for 2021, 2022.
Good evening, Board Chair Warden, Vice Chair Perezza, Superintendent Ingram, board members, and colleagues. And Ms. Godfrey has the presentation. We can go to slide 2. With the escalation of COVID-19 cases and the variants being more contagious and transmissible, in addition to the lack of vaccinations due to choice or ineligibility due to age, principals, teachers, and district leadership met to be proactive and to discuss virtual learning on a case-by-case basis. Collectively, they developed criteria for virtual learning. Since that time, the COVID numbers have given us cause to pause, meet as an executive team, as Dr. Ingram mentioned yesterday, and lessen some of the restrictions found on PE-01 in your packet on the first page. Some of the team members are here, as well as a teacher representative from our schools, in the event that you have questions as well. The changes are as follows. Under technology and connectivity, while it would be ideal for all students who would qualify for virtual to have perfect connectivity, we want to eliminate the second sentence of the PE-01 and the note. ECPPS will work with families in the event a hotspot does not provide adequate connectivity. Under attendance, we want to eliminate the first sentence. However, we want the board to note that those students who will be selected based off of the criteria for this limited option will have to adhere to the compulsory attendance law, and students who do not attend will be required to return to in-person instruction. Under academics, eliminate the first sentence. And under the last sentence, ensure that there is a parent, guardian, and/or support person to ensure students are attending and submitting assignments. Expectations were created for students, parents, and teachers to communicate what is expected during this platform of learning. You also have that document in your packet. And if you note, it looks very similar to something that you have seen before when we put before you the virtual pilot. Next slide, please. The document following is the expectation and next steps document. And this was created to share information in more detail as to what will happen after a student is approved based off of the criteria. Finally, a Google form was created to capture those who find this limited virtual learning option as a need for their family, and information will be shared as quickly as possible. Information from this form will help guide the student approvals by principals for virtual learning in their respective schools. And then in addition to that, Ms. Sawyer has a document to share with you that is created for principals and teachers to help communicate and support the sharing of information, the sharing of instructional materials, et cetera, after the students have been selected, to kind of make that transition a little bit more easy. We are asking that this plan be approved to take action on this evening as it is presented. Are there any questions?
So. You can go ahead.
Yeah, you go.
What are the parameters
That's what I was mad.
Okay, so if you look at your
For
first
allowing-
page,
allowing a student to, I see medical documentation, but
correct.
what does that medical documentation need to be and what does it include?
In the event that there is medical documentation to support that a student would be better off to learn virtually due to COVID-19, then that medical documentation would be provided in the Google form.
Is that something you're asking specifically from a physician?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So the only way a child can be virtual will be with medical documentation from a provider.
We have that as an option, yes. In the event that there is some concern, we do not want to in any way deter that. But as Dr. Ingram mentioned earlier, we really do want the students to be able to come in for in-person instruction.
An example might be, I'm just giving an example, if a child lives in a home and there's an immunocompromised parent or grandparent, that would be a logical reason. That's just one example. If children have proven successful in the past, because I believe on our form we've got attendance, adequate, the term, I'm not using the right term, I'm mixing my terms with other school districts, adequate progress or academic progress, submitting assignments and doing things right.
Right.
That would certainly be in consideration. We want to stop just short of choice, just flat out choice, because we believe that kids do learn better in school, and we think most of them want to come back to school. So we're allowing it, but we'd like some compelling evidence that we really need to allow them to be virtual.
And one of the reasons why we wanted to eliminate to be considered a student should be at grade level in reading and writing. But if they have medical documentation to prove that, or as Dr. Ingram said, there is a family member that they reside with that could potentially create some health issues, then we don't want to make that as one of the criteria. So that is why the document was we're asking if we could change and lessen the restrictions, because we don't want to be limiting.
So will we require documentation as well regarding the family member that's in the home and what medical?
I would think so. Just some type of minimal but accurate portrayal of what the reason would be. I believe in trusting people, but I also believe in verifying, because what we don't want is someone to do this for convenience. Like, I'm sure we had some kids here. We had some kids where I was all over the country that may come up with what sounds to be a very compelling reason, and then they kind of go ghost, on us in the virtual, and then we'd have to send out social workers to find kids and say what gives here. And in some cases, look, if you can travel, if you can do all these other things, then you can come to school. So that's where I think you get, we really want to trust people to do what's best for themselves. And so we're giving examples of criteria that would be, I think, no-brainers with proper documentation that we would certainly allow, because we're certainly not cold-hearted here, but we don't want a child out on virtual that has very little to no chance of succeeding for whatever reason. If there's not parent support at home, for instance, that may not be the fault of anybody, but if there's not someone to support at home, then it might be better for that child to come to school. Again, we want to provide the numbers, the level of support that we can, that would be in the best interest of the child. And again, that might come from me being married to a social worker, but that's what I would do. If we approve the child to be virtual and then we're not hearing from the child, we got to find out why not. And it might be a barrier that we can overcome so that the child could remain virtual. Might be a hotspot. It might be a device that's not working. It could be dozens of things. But we would try to accommodate the best we can. But we are encouraging people, come on, let's go to school, wear your mask, be safe, stay as distant as possible, because we still think that's the best instruction. And I think that's what you're hearing. I think that's what we're hearing across the board from our national leaders and our scientists and our medical professionals, that they want us in school and they want us to protect ourselves, but understanding there would be some reasons why we would have to accommodate virtually. And we want them to be sound reasons.
Will we allow the reason that my child does not want to wear a mask as a reason?
No, that's not what we were thinking. What we were thinking first is that given that, we would not allow someone to enter the building without a mask unless there's a medical reason documented. And there are some. I can't spout them off now, but I know there would be some logistical, some legitimate reasons. But in essence, the principals, we did poll the principals, and we asked the principals how they wanted to handle that. And they wanted to take a pretty tough stand on that. If you're unwilling to come into the school and not wear a mask, then you can't come to the building, because we don't want any potential spread from someone not wearing a mask, although we understand that there could be some legitimate medical reasons documented why someone can't. And then we would just stay as safe as we can in other situations. So what I would say, and this has worked well in other places, I'm assuming it would work well here, is we really want to build a culture of compliance. We don't like these regulations. I don't want anybody that's watching us tonight thinking that we enjoy wearing these things. I certainly don't. No one here at the table does. No one in this room does. But I would really, and this is, as Chair Warden said, this is a public health issue. And the last thing I want to do as superintendent is have to shut down the school system because we've had some type of super spread. So I always hated that line, like the line in the sand, and if you cross it, what are you going to do? And well, I back up and I draw another line, or, I don't want to make analogies to the Cuban Missile Crisis or anything like that, but folks, we got to be safe. And I think, I've got a 10-year-old granddaughter at home who wants to go, well, at least where I'm living. I'm homeless right now, but I mean, where I'm staying, but she wants to desperately go back to school, but she can't be vaccinated. She's 10. And the science is showing that I could unknowingly spread it to her. And I've got a grandchild that's going to be born next month. So I'm going to wear it. Again, I'm sharing personal choices, and I'm not trying to get other people to share personal choices or beliefs or anything, but we're doing this, and I think the board, and I commend the board for it, because you showed courage in leadership in requiring the masks, but I think we're following the science. And we are going to make accommodations the very best we can when we can, but we want to be sure that the reasons people aren't coming are not out of convenience, that they're for legitimate reasons. And medical is obviously one, but it doesn't have to be of that particular child. It could be other things. But then if we experience children who are not participating adequately online, then I think it's incumbent upon us to check that out. Why not? Because that's going to have a tremendous negative impact on a child throughout the rest of his or her life if we go 2 years now without solid instruction. If someone has a really bad instructional year, it's almost like it takes 3 years of outstanding instruction to make up for that. And that's like hitting 10 straight green lights on Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh without having to stop. And then a second year like that, I think the gaps that we're seeing in academics is, and I'm not trying to be circular here, but I think you have to think about these things. We're going to have larger gaps. Poverty causes gaps. A lot of the kids that are home for whatever reason last year may have been extremely good reasons. I don't quibble with those. But if they're replete in poverty-stricken homes, or if they're more prevalent in poverty-stricken areas, then that's going to make the gaps even wider. And at least in my experience, and I realize it wasn't here, but the higher number of students that chose to stay home tended to be in the higher poverty areas. And they were some of the children that needed to be in school the most. That was just my experience. Now, I'm not saying that was what it was like here. I don't know what it was like here. But I would think that we probably had some kids virtual last year that were disengaged. Is that correct? I'm sure it was. And nobody wants our children disengaged. So if you really need virtual, we're going to do our best to accommodate it. But then again, if we're not getting results and participation and effort and that kind of thing, then we're going to go out and get you and bring you back. And certainly health and safety is the most important thing, because if we're not healthy and if we're not safe, then nothing else really matters, right? But I think that's the approach we take.
And we did become a little bit more rigid in our criteria for attendance. And so from the K-8 perspective last year, we took attendance like a one and done. So you presented yourself, or if you completed assignments, you were present. What we're doing here is really making sure that we're spelling out what the expectation is. And so one of the things that we are going to have the teachers do with these students who are virtual is to take attendance for every class. That will not maybe necessarily go into Power School until the afternoon, and I've talked to the district data manager to see if that would happen. But oftentimes we have students who leave before lunchtime and they are considered absent because they are not present for 50% of the day. What we need to make sure is that our students are present virtually for that amount of time as well to be counted present. And so it's just a matter of communicating to parents. They do need to go to those virtual meetings. They do need to complete the assignments by the communicated deadlines to be considered, in attendance. And then if not, we will follow the compulsory attendance law, which is mandated by general statute. And that will be based off of the number of absences and following up and then requiring them to come back in.
And that might sound a little harsh, but in the long run, which is more fair? That we don't pay attention to the child that's not at school and perhaps is not doing as, and I'm speaking to everybody here, I'm not speaking to just Ms. Perez, I don't want you to think that I'm just, or to me, that's not fair. That's not fair to that child. What's fair is going out and supporting the child and the family the best we can do so that we make sure that child gets a really good education. And if it's not working virtually, then they need to come back. And And that may seem like a hard line if somebody's nervous or scared, but I think that's a lot fairer than just saying, oh, well, you just have to stay out. And then 2 years, they've missed 2 years of school and are all of a sudden, a lot older and all kinds of, negative things happen. So that's kind of, the way I see it. Doesn't answer every question, but I think our situations are too complex to say, well, if this, then A, if this, then B, if this, then C, life's just a little too complicated. So we will have to have some judgment call, but we'll do the best we can to accommodate compelling requests.
Absolutely. And the expectations do spell that out. So you can see where teachers are to communicate with the parents, but the students are to advocate for themselves. So in the event that they cannot connect or there is an issue, that's an expectation that the parent and the student would reach out to the staff member to say, hey, I'm having difficulty, so that we can mitigate that and they will be present and in attendance.
Did you have a question?
That's a really good
I
question.
do have a
Though.
few questions. First question, how does this this virtual learning compare to the first one that we approved for middle school? Is middle school still in effect the same way, or is this overriding that?
Okay, so the virtual learning option that we had for the middle school, and I wanted to make sure that we're kind of drawing a definitive line, if you will. So the virtual pilot was determined by a selection committee and basically our steering committee, where they really got together and talked about a virtual academy and what all that would entail in our county. And one of the things that they were looking at was starting small and then going larger, learning from whatever we learned from the pilot. That is for a virtual academy. That is for a specific online learner. Those are students who did very well with virtual learning. And as Dr. Ingram has talked about a profile of a graduate, think about a profile of an online student. Those students are motivated, oftentimes independent learners. They're responsible. They have a certain skill set. They do better in that learning environment. So that was a pilot to see. This is virtual learning in response to COVID. You can't get them confused in the sense, because if we were only doing a virtual academy because of COVID, when COVID went away, then what would be the necessity of a virtual academy? So they're separate, however, the same learning platform. And that does not mean that there aren't students that would do very well in this virtual learning, right? But it was just, those are the separations. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. So it's two separate. So it's still separate. Okay. Next question is approval of these students to get chosen to do virtual. Who's the responsibility of that? Is that the school principal or?
So as far as for this plan that we have here, the team, and we have some members there, felt that the criteria that was very well spelled out here would help the principals make that decision, because ultimately what that will look like in each school could potentially be different. Because, and I'll give an example, Northside Elementary School might have 30 students in one grade level that requested this and really met the criteria. Whereas at Weeksville Elementary School, there might only be 1 or 2. And so being able to look at that and being able to create those schedules and, figure out what that's going to look like in their school would definitely be determined by that building administrator.
Wow.
So they would have that. And it makes it easier in the event that there were any questions about that.
Wow. Okay. And I guess my last question would be, I know we do have a shortage of teachers in our district right now.
Yes.
The teacher coverage for this program, for this virtual learning, how are we going to cover that with the shortage that we have? How is this?
You cover the virtual?
Yeah.
You mean who would teach the virtual?
Yes.
Okay, so that again would be determined at the school level. Why is that? Because the principals were able to see those teachers that were teaching all year. And so they would have the opportunity to say, this teacher excelled in this environment, right? And so being able to communicate with those teachers, make those decisions and do that. Additionally, there will be professional development and support for those teachers as well. But we wouldn't put someone maybe that wasn't vetted in that position. I don't think a principal would say, we don't have a position, a teacher in this position, so we're going to put someone else there.
So that opened up a few questions more for that. So with the teacher coverage, there'll be dual teaching?
No, hopefully not. What we have, and you all have said, is that you don't want the teachers to teach concurrent sessions. I agree with that. I tried it myself. I don't want to ask anybody to do something that I have not tried myself. And I did it, and I'll get a little bit with my own personal experience. I did it with my granddaughter who's 5 and should listen to me. And I had the computer up, and I was trying to attend to what I was doing on the screen with my 5-year-old granddaughter who is in person. And it was nightmarish, exhausting. It can be done. And there's ways to use creative scheduling to make that happen. But we have to have some really robust and rigorous professional development in order to be able to do that. And doing that while you're, like last year when they were trying to, do everything all at one time, we did it in snippets, and it was ongoing, but it's a process. And that's why, in looking towards the future and why we wanted to pilot something separate, that's one of those things. So we want to be able to make sure that there's support. We do have someone working on some of those currently right now, and we'll have something hopefully done by Friday to help the teachers, and then start out and then have it ongoing, but in chunks, so that we can process it, make sure it makes sense, and help with that, and learn from what we have done last year.
All right, so forgive me, I must have missed it. So how are we going to teach the virtual?
Okay, so you would do it, so for instance, at the elementary level, we actually have looked at one teacher per grade level if there's that many students. And so instead of me being a first grade teacher perhaps and teaching 2 different at the same time, there might be enough students where, yes, we would have to rearrange the schedule a bit, but I would only have the virtual, whereas you, who would also be a first grade teacher, then you would have the face-to-face students. So one teacher would not be tasked with doing both. I can't guarantee that that's going to, because I don't speak in absolutes, but I am strongly recommending that does not happen. It's a lot.
So to clarify, you're saying that this will not be something that every teacher in the district is required to do virtual. This will be select individuals in the building. And we're not talking about abbreviating school days or schedules or anything like that. We're not talking about.
Nope. The schedule would remain the same. So the schedule that is communicated to the teachers and the parents and the students during meet and greet, that would remain the same. And students will be required to attend all virtual meetings. And now, will they be face-to-face for 6 hours? No, they will still have asynchronous opportunities, which are those activities where the teacher might say, hey, let's do this geometry lesson, or let's look for shapes. And then they might log off, and maybe they're going to find shapes and take pictures of those in their house. What is a triangle? What is a circle? And then upload those images to the teacher. So there's creative and innovative ways to be able to do it so that the student wouldn't necessarily be attached to their computer at the same time, but they would have the same hours.
So if my child is enrolled face-to-face, they will go to school all day.
Yes, ma'am.
And they will typically not have their teacher having to.
Correct. They will be attending to you face-to-face. Yes, ma'am.
Amen.
Dr. Spencer, you're looking for action on this tonight. So my question is this: as we come to make a decision, if we decide to go with your recommendation, I guess the floodgates would open for those parents who are looking for this option tomorrow morning. And with school starting next week, So our backs will be up against the wall as we review these requests
Right,
and make the hard decision on who we approve and who we do not approve.
right.
And so the team is prepared for that, I guess, result, should we decide to go that way.
And that's another reason why we wanted it to be a school level decision based by, with the principal and things. And the reason why is because at central office, I could get all of those and I could make decisions based off of the criteria with a team, but then we would have to communicate our decision back to the school principals. And so there's these layers of almost operator, if you will, where it needs to go directly to the people that are going to make the schedules and all of that. We wanted to make it, while it is last minute, if you will, as Dr. Ingram pointed out, July 4th, it wasn't as bad as it is currently right now. And so if we've learned anything from the pandemic, we've learned that we need to be flexible. The teachers, when we had professional development last week, I met with each grade level and the team, all presented information. So basically the documents that you have before you as far as what is core instruction and all of those things was shared with the teachers. But I also told every one of them, I do not have a magic 8-ball. And I cannot guarantee by shaking it that we are going to be able to do something the first day of school. I just don't know. I said, prepare in the event that something would need to happen. And I said, that's why we have all of our Canvas assignments. They need to be posted on Monday. They don't have to be published, but they need to be there for the week. And you need to make sure that any meetings that we have, you show your face. And so you're prepared in the event that it happens. Hopefully it would not happen, but in the event that it did, as Dr. Ingram said, there's schools that have had to go completely virtual. We want to be prepared and intentionally focused so that in the event something happens, it's not going to be as stressful.
I give a lot of credit. I think what we learned last year in this country is just how resilient
Yes.
and capable our educators are. We literally turned, and I'm not saying just in Elizabeth City, but everywhere across the country, we turned an aircraft carrier on a dime. We went from full in-face virtual learning to bam, shut down, just a screeching halt, just like that. And this may seem like that, but it's not. We're in a better place than we were last year. But the Delta variant it's concerning, and it's gone up. And we've got some folks that are would have genuinely legitimate reasons to opt for virtual. And morally and ethically, we should do everything we can to provide it. But on the other hand, we don't want, we're all parents. I've taught school a long time. I've got ties to some people on this board having taught or taught a relative. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. We just don't want someone just to willy-nilly take virtual and then be out there and they're lost. And then it would be bad on us if we just kind of turned our head and then at the end of the year, well, what are we going to do? Well, I guess repeat the grade. No, we don't want to do that. That's malfeasance. So there are going to be sometimes some very direct, heart-to-heart meetings with people about this is why you need to be face-to-face. You need to be face-to-face because we've tried this. You're not coming to school. You got the internet. You got the hotspot, but you're not coming. And you're not doing well. This is unacceptable. So you're going to have to come in. By same token, if somebody tries to come in, doesn't want to wear a mask, I get it. I respect the personal choice, but we're doing what we believe is best for the whole. And that's what we're going to have to do. And we don't want to be hardcore, but I want to keep school open. And I got the principal's backs on this. And I know that you have our backs on this, so I appreciate that. There are 45 virtual academies out there now. So my favorite saying is you either drive the train, you jump on the train, or you get run over by the train. Now, we can't drive that train because 45 districts are ahead of us, but we can certainly jump on it. And I think we can develop a strong virtual academy. It's going to take a little time because virtual learning is never really going to go away. It's just going to pick up steam. And crises like this in our country, in our world, that's what really promotes change, to be honest, the response to it. So it's never going to be the way it used to be. And I'm not so sure it should be, because we have access to so many more tools than we had before. For some learners, it really works well. So we need to work on that so that we can accommodate the learners for which it works really, really well. In fact, last April, we heard from a student when I was with you as a guest. And we heard the student say it worked really well for that student. So we have to keep our eyes on the future as well. So I'm proud of everybody on the screen looking in, the teachers and the principals that helped us with the criteria. We just didn't sit in the corner with 2 or 3 people and throw this together. We got input from other educators. Our music people did a great job with protocols for masking and delivering musical instruction in the arts safely. And I have a lot of faith in them that we're going to do well by children. So,
With that being said, we said a lot about elementary, and we talked about, a grade level person who may be the first grade virtual teacher. What does the day look like for a person who is the only art teacher in the building or the only music teacher in the building? What does the day look like for that person who has to juggle the entire school,
Right.
and the virtual students?
So that could be creative scheduling by the principal, because if you think about it, and you would have a class that would come in that potentially they would have a session where they would have students that would be virtual. It might be multi-age. We need to think outside the box. And then those activities could be created in such a way that that would happen. But then when you start thinking about the middle and high school, we do have courseware through Edgenuity, which is a state-approved program. And so in the event that some of those options may not be available just due to the nature of the number of students and how that would overtask some of the teachers, with maybe you have 2 virtual and then, you only have 2 virtual in the school, there is that potential that they could be assigned that coursework with a teacher of record. And so that would be more of an independent work with consultation with that teacher. But then, parents would know that up front. That is what the option is. And that's why it would be communicated from the school level, because until you know the numbers, you wouldn't really know what that schedule would look like. But then they would know that. And there are some options that may not be available if that is something that you are selecting. Mr. Leidy came up and did mention about extracurricular activities. Well, if you are selecting this option, then on that criteria list, we do need to add that. So I'm saying we do need to add that as well, that is something that, if you're not coming in for instruction due to the fact that you are concerned about the health and safety and well-being of yourself or family members, then you really wouldn't want to be coming in and then playing, a contact sport, if you will, or some of those other activities.
So for clarification, anyone who selects virtual will not be allowed to come into the building or on campus unless it's for the testing that's listed in here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. They are required to come in for the testing, and that is state and local. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Are there any other questions for Dr. Spencer? Do we have any idea, any idea how many students we're talking?
I wish I did. I really don't. I would like to think that most people really want to come back to school. I can tell you that we're up to my granddaughter. She just wants to, I think she wants to get away from her grandmother, to tell you the truth. I mean, because Sue really put them through the ringer, you know, she was really on top of them. She even called me one day and said, it's like herding cats. It's like herding cats. I said, sweetie, it's only 2 of them. I mean, that's not a herd. But she was really, but I can attest from afar how challenging that was, because she was on a virtual classroom with lots of other kids with varying degrees of support. So my granddaughter might be helping a classmate who didn't have somebody at home to help them navigate a problem. So she might actually be assisting the teacher at that time. So I don't think it's going to look like that. But we really won't know until we know. And that's the frustrating thing. But I don't know that that's much different than a regular school year. We really don't know until they show up. I've had that as a high school principal. You'll get unanticipated students coming the first day, and you have to work out schedules and things like that. And so I think we'll have some of that, obviously, but I wish I knew.
That are people that move in. And we oftentimes have people that wait until after Labor Day, because in a state maybe where they live, that's when school started. And so, they come in and they finish with vacations or whatever, and then they come in and we get this influx of students. So it's really hard to predict. And as the news goes on, maybe people that do have a child that maybe they were concerned about medically previously, and then, now that it's getting maybe worse in the news, or the numbers are going up, then they might reconsider. So it's really hard to predict or even speculate at this point.
With that, I wanted to ask one thing. What is the situation if, for example, the numbers start to go down for our area for these virtual students, and the parent feels like, okay, there's not quite as much angst about sending my child back to school at this point, because everything seems to be leveling off and we're getting better. Is that going to be an option for those students? They can return?
I think so. I think it would just be, it's the same as if somebody was coming into our district that would be new, you would make those adjustments. It's very similar to those students who maybe aren't in attendance and they are required to come back in. We will have to make adjustments. And
It'd be easier if it were at the end of a grading period or a
Yes.
semester or something, but that's not always possible either.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Mhm.
Of course.
So we don't anticipate letting students, again, things got better, now things are
Like a revolving.
not good again.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to stick your toe in the water and say,
And then come
ooh, it's
back
too
out.
cold, let me come back later. Well, let me try again. Oh, let me go back out. I think that's counterproductive.
So I think if there are legitimate medical concerns,
Yeah.
then this needs to be, there's going to need to be a
Right.
significant change for someone to
come back.
come back.
Yeah, now, I'm not saying that couldn't happen. I had a really close friend, some of you may have known him, that he had a serious illness all through his life. And he literally did sort of that. He sort of jumped in, jumped out, and it was sort of a remission kind of thing. So and it may be several times during a year. So, but that's an extreme case and it's kind of rare, but we've always worked with stuff like that. So I think we would certainly continue to do that.
We've had kids in that situation.
Mhm.
All the time, so.
But I do want to give kudos to the principals, the teachers, and the staff because of their ability to be able to be flexible and to do what's best for students and to meet and come up with the criteria collectively, but then also for the teachers who each and every day show up for our kids for Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools. So,
Okay. Any other questions?
And you do want us to take action on this?
yes, please.
Well, with that being said, it's no secret that I'm not a fan of virtual instruction unless there's a medical reason. And I appreciate all the parameters that you've given us. And I think this morning after, or sometime after an email went out, I received calls and emails, texts, and concerns, mostly from teachers. And they don't want to do virtual learning unless, they don't want to do both. And that's a clear message that was said at the end of last year and said to me today.
It was said at the meeting that we had prior to this one. And
Yes.
I totally agree with.
And I'm going to make the motion, but I'm saying as presented this evening to us.
Okay.
I do not support teachers having to be in the classroom and teach online and in person. And again, I know that's being left up to the building level principals, but as presented tonight with the parameters that we have been given with medical conditions, only under medical conditions and medical need, and going through every possible measure to make sure that teachers are not having to teach both online and face-to-face at the same time, I make a motion that we accept your plan tonight.
Second. And I would just like to say I second it for the same reasons that Pam just kind of laid out. Because I do believe that, we should be returning back in person, and having a virtual option was not something that we voted on the last meeting. Understanding that the numbers are going up and children and parents all feel that their safety is at risk. Just the idea of bouncing back and, like you said, putting a toe in and a toe out, it's not in the best interest of the child or in the best interest of teachers as well. So paying close attention to everything that's going on and being able to pivot, I think is going to be paramount for what we do next as we go forward, and then paying attention to the data and using that to our best judgment. And so I second that, Pam.
Amber,
Yes.
Rodney Wilson,
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Sheila Williams,
Yes.
Lotto,
Yes.
Richard Wilson,
Yes.
Harris.
Thank you.
Who was that?
Thank you, Dr. Spencer.
I know it's a little late, but I do want to make sure if for some reason things change, looks like, oh, we got all this number, that you're gonna come back for us.
Sure.
Because I look at it as sort of, I agree with everything you said about putting the pressure on the teachers. And I'm just saying that if that looks like the case, I like to hear why and what.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. Ms. Houston, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you as head of the policy committee.
Introduce Ms. Tammy Sawyer, Director of Community Schools and Executive Assistant to the Superintendent Board, to present these policies which we have already had under review. Ms. Sawyer.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Committee Chair Houston, Superintendent Ingram, board members, and colleagues. I come before you this evening to share a couple of updates to the policies presented in July for initial review. First, policy 7510, the leave policy, which is in your packet. Put my glasses on. Was updated since our last meeting to accurately reflect that sick leave and vacation leave are allowed to be taken in whole and half-day increments. All the other revisions were the same. Second, Board Member Spence at the July meeting requested clarification on policies 1710, 4020, 7230, and 7232 regarding the reference of 40 or older in each policy. These policies address discrimination prohibited under federal law, including age discrimination, and are necessary to fulfill federal legal requirements. More specifically, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act
of 1967 prohibits employment discrimination against persons 40 years of age or older and protects certain applicants and employees 40 years old and older from discrimination on the basis of age in hiring, promotion, firing, compensation, or terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. Additional information regarding age discrimination and federal law is available online from the Department of Labor and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Lastly, the board asked for staff to recommend policy updates based on COVID for policy 5020, visitors in the school, and 5030, community use of facilities. You will see the recommendations in your packet for each policy. Policy 5020 still limits visitors inside school facilities. However, it does state that principals and the superintendent retain the authority to authorize or restrict visitors to school buildings as they find necessary to ensure and protect the health and safety of occupants of those buildings. The policy continues to allow volunteers to assist with extracurricular activities, as well as provide entrance to school buildings to access sporting events. If there is not an exterior entrance to a venue for sports within the school district, policy now allows for visitors to enter our facilities to proceed to the designated venue. Policy includes language that face coverings are required in accordance with district, local, state, and federal mandates. Policy 5030 has been updated to include the community use of outdoor facilities. Outdoor facilities will remain available for community use unless restrictions are mandated by local, state, or federal regulations. Face coverings are not required outdoors. Any questions? Okay. With that being said, Committee Chair Houston.
Yes.
At this time, it is the request that the policy updates presented last month, along with the revisions to the leave policy and the latest revisions to policy 5020 and 5030, be considered for placement on the consent agenda for approval on August 23rd, 2021. And that concludes my policy update report and request.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sawyer. And Chair, we need to move that these be placed on the consent agenda. Are we doing that all together? I think we are.
You can do it now for this one.
Okay. I move that the policies so referenced be placed on the consent agenda for the August 23rd regular meeting.
And I need a second for that.
I'll second it.
Mr. Archuleta seconded. And we will take a roll call vote.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
and Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. And now we're going to move on to the Excellent Educators Committee. Dr. Williams.
For excellent educators, we have Ms. Rhonda James Davis that will come before you.
And we're actually going to take action on
We're
several
going
of
to
these
take action.
items.
So these three will not be for the consent agenda. Chair Borden?
No,
Okay.
we need to take action on these, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Ms. James
Okay.
Davis.
Thank you.
And so I do ask the board to take actions on the items that were presented in closed session. That was listed in the packets for elections.
You want to make that motion, Dr. Williams?
Yes, so I move that we accept the proposal submitted by Mrs. James Davis tonight. If I can get a second for that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I recommend that the motion be to accept the superintendent's recommendations and report regarding personnel?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so just for clarification, I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendations for personnel. If I can get a second.
Before we get a second, is this also including EEO1 and EEO2 at the same motion? Or are we including it all in one, or are we doing it separate?
Yes, those were all
That's all
recommendations,
superintendents?
and
That's all superintendents?
yeah, they're all
That's clarification on my
recommendations.
part. I
Yes.
misunderstood it.
He was just clarifying the motion.
That's okay. I'll just make sure. Thank you.
Mr. Lighty, do we need to list all three of those
I
in the motion?
recommend you either take three separate actions or specifically state each one of those is included. in the motion.
Okay, specifically
Right.
state each one.
Right, so because 3 says for the superintendent's recommendations.
Right.
Okay, all right, so I rescind that move and I will repeat this. Okay, so I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for EE01, child nutrition salary increase. And I need a second on that. We'll take them individually.
Well, I'm sorry, we're gonna make.
We can do it all as one. Can we not?
We accept each one of the things, just spell them out so the public will know
Right.
which ones are being acted.
Yeah, we can take each one separately or all together, just so they're all
If you're
spelled
separate, you
out
have separate
completely.
votes on each motion.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
You
So
need to
that's-
do it separately. Okay. So we'll do it separately. Okay.
Second?
Okay, did we get a second
I said
to the
second.
verse? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Abstain.
George Archuleta,
I don't think you can abstain.
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you.
If I made. the
Chair
motion.
Ward, I don't think you can abstain from.
Motion. Yeah.
Can you abstain?
Making the motion, she can abstain, correct? No, she cannot abstain.
Yeah, but
She can.
But why?
But
you can
why?
make a motion and not vote. That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
make a motion and not vote. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. All right.
Okay, are we okay for the second one? Okay. All right, the next one, EEO2, superintendent's recommendation, after-school care salary increase.
I'll second that.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and finally, EE03, superintendent's recommendations and report regarding personnel. I need a second, please.
Second.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James Davis.
Thank you, Dr.
Sorry
Williams.
for any confusion on this.
That's fine. We want to do it correctly. Don't want any problem. Okay, is there any other business to bring before the board tonight? Committee
One thing I want to ask, Mr. Chair, does it got to be a motion? We said we would talk about it, the next meeting, the things concerning the bus drivers. Does that happen? I mean, to make sure we discuss that, or?
As the committee chair, if you wish to elaborate on that, you may at this time.
Oh, can I mean, because we sort of discussed the code
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, I wanted to see about what we discussed about giving the bus drivers a raise.
We already voted on that.
We
Did we
did.
not?
Mhm. We did.
Yeah.
We voted on the raise, and I believe
We
the
voted for raise,
staff is going to come back and look
They're
at,
going to come back with some proposals at our next board meeting.
My bad.
Yeah.
right.
Okay, I thought
You just
talking about
wanted to make
the
sure,
payroll
that's
thing.
fine.
Yeah, Rachel's gonna bring back, some different proposals at the board meeting on Monday. And then at that
The
time,
bonuses.
I really,
Motion kicking in.
but I just
Final.
didn't know if we have to make it formal. You
no,
know?
no, we're fine. With two of them. Does anyone have anything else? You're straight, Mr. Archuleta?
I'm
About what-
saying that,
okay.
yes,
All
I'm
right.
sorry, and I apologize.
All right, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, any other business at this time? Okay, I'd like to have a motion from the floor to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
And a second,
Second.
and a roll call vote, Ms. Sawyer.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.